Welcome back, everyone. Now is your chance to join the discussion. John and Commissioner Donilon are ready to answer your questions about the challenges that some of you, perhaps many of you out there, are facing in dealing with your insurance companies. Now, we've gotten these questions through all throughout the week on Twitter, Facebook, and email, and we just want to encourage you to keep those questions coming. Before we get to our questions, we were talking a little bit, so much to talk about. We didn't even get to flood insurance. And Commissioner Donilon, you just recently wrote an editorial about flood insurance and the number of folks who have it, and unfortunately, the number of folks who don't have it.
Statewide, it's about a third of the property, and it ought to be all of the property. And I say that every year as we go into hurricane season. 12 states are net consumers of the National Flood Insurance Program. We are far and away the biggest. We collected $15 billion for Rita Katrina losses, and the program, since its inception in the 60s, is $18 billion in the red. That's how much we have benefited from it. Gustav, 4 years ago, created 2 days of 10-inch plus rainstorms that flooded hundreds of homes in Alexandria and Monroe the day after it hit in Houma and did a lot of damage in the Baton Rouge area, continued through to North Louisiana, with causing flood damage as a result of those associated rains. So unfortunately, in coastal parishes, it's about 40% take up on the program.
But why not? I mean, it's not cost prohibitive because it's not a flat fee. I mean, it's based on where you live, right?
Absolutely. Your elevation, whether you were in Salt Lake City or Grand Isle or Cameron Parish, determines the cost of your flood insurance. You can build higher if need be to save money on that. If you think you're higher than the area around you, as I did, you can get a surveyor to document that and get a reduction because your lot is higher than the zip code area that you're located in. All of those things are available to folks to save money on that federally subsidized National Flood Insurance Program. It's not really insurance, it's a FEMA program, but folks just, it's like young people that think they don't need health insurance until
something happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Point in case, Isaac. A lot of people in areas that did not normally flood, and now here they are dealing with the consequences.
Absolutely.
Let me add one thing to that, too. It's not only get the flood insurance, but make sure you get enough. A very common and sad tale that I witnessed representing a lot of people after Hurricane Katrina was people had flood insurance, but they didn't have nearly enough. Make sure if you're going to get the flood insurance, get enough to cover the structure and to cover your contents.
Absolutely.
People had flood insurance policies that were 1/3 the size of their homeowners policies, and when a decision was made, and a lot of times we litigated this, they would get only flood insurance, and it wasn't nearly enough to rebuild their homes or to replace their contents.
And so when they're going through this process of trying to decide, what do you advise them? What should they take?
Make sure you have enough of both, because if it's a wind caused destruction or damage, you got enough insurance, and if it's flood caused, you got enough, and if it's half and half or whatever it is, you're protected.
Right.
Okay. All right. We have lots of questions that are coming up, so let's go ahead and get to those questions. Our first one comes from Ava in River Ridge, and this is her question via email. She says, what does President Barack Obama's flood insurance reform bill do, and when does it go into effect?
It goes into effect right now and is in effect, and it reauthorizes the program for 5 years. They've been doing 60-day kick the can down the road for several years now, since the last long-term reauthorization expired 2 or 3 years ago. But this time they finally got together, Democrats and Republicans, Vitter and Landrieu, and across the board, the 38 states that are net payers into the program wanted reforms. Take vacation homes away, higher premiums that can be actuarially justified or indicated be charged for the coverage that the federal government was sponsoring. A compromise was put together. The previous law had a 10% per year cap on how much rates could go up annually. This one has 20%. And that was part of the compromise, though. That's the highest they can go. That doesn't mean the federal government will raise them that much. That's the cap that was put in place. And they pretty much have agreed to forget the debt. the $18 billion of red ink they've accumulated. They're just trying to make the program pay for itself going forward.
So to try and say that in ways, and you correct me if I'm understanding, because this is all, it's a lot of work by a lot of lawmakers and legislators.
Yes.
The good news is the protection stays in place. It's good for 5 more years.
That's correct.
There's a cap. They can't just jack it up to God knows what prices, 20% cap at the worst case scenario. And overall, it's something that I think people agree is a good thing. If legislators on both sides of the aisle agree, can't be that bad, and it sounds good to me.
I
Sounds
agree,
good to you?
John.
But now,
I
what
really
about our
do.
viewers out there? I know you say the 20% cap, but what's the likelihood that that could happen?
Hard to say.
20%.
It is up to FEMA, and FEMA, they have a big nationwide program to administer. And two of the things that determine those premiums are elevation, and we're sinking, as you know, and that's exacerbating our problem, and certification of levees. In North Louisiana, it's a big issue from the, believe it or not, the Red River levees, because cities like Alexandria are dependent on those levees to protect flood events going forward. And all across America, California, Shreveport, Alexandria, and the East Coast, they're decertifying levees for inspections that are showing failure or defects or vulnerabilities in those levee systems. And when that happens, when the Corps certifies a weakness in a levee system, that increases the cost of flood insurance. To our benefit, $15 billion has been spent on our levee system in the 5-parish area around New Orleans, and we just had a pretty good test.
That's right.
Floodwaters comparable to Katrina, and
it
those
worked.
5 parishes were dry.
They were dry. Yes,
Quick
John.
follow-up. So if they decertify levees, insurance rates go up?
Yes, flood insurance
But
rates.
when we get $15 billion worth of new levees, insurance rates go down?
Hopefully.
Man, please,
me.
man. No, I know not you.
FEMA.
But
Let's go to our next question.
Okay.
This comes to Jessica. Comes to us from Jessica. She says, "What is the mold exclusion?"
Well, it's not an exclusion necessarily, but it's generally in a homeowner's policy a cap on mold remediation damage. And what that means is if you have mold as a result of a flood, that water sits in your home for several days. And Katrina, we had weeks of water and then weeks of humidity and heat before anybody could get a contractor out to tear it out and prevent the continued growth of the mold. Generally speaking, there was a crisis 20 years ago in Texas where there was thought to be large exposure and risk to owners of property from mold contamination, and that started the national practice of putting mold caps, mold remediation caps on policies, and they're in place for the most part. In this event, and by the way, that's not further complicate things. It's not for flood damage because a homeowner's policy excludes flood.
Right.
It's for mold associated with a ruptured pipe or a leaky roof, not from
So is this
rising
another
water.
reason why folks need to have flood insurance?
No, not that mold exclusion.
Not that mold
No,
exclusion.
no.
We're talking
Different
totally
issue.
separate. Yeah.
Different issue.
Okay.
Yes.
But let me add to that, and covered also. Many people remember visiting homes after Katrina. Take that Petri dish you had in science class in school where you left something in that Petri dish for days and that mold just grew. You saw that in your homes, and that thick black carpet mold.
Right.
Insurance policies generally say, homeowners policies say, we're not paying sometimes exorbitant costs to get rid of that mold,
Right.
which sometimes can be very dangerous, and it's awfully expensive to get rid of. The follow-up to that, however, is, and I've litigated this, is if the insurance company, and this is not the commissioner of insurance job or responsibility, I mean, he polices insurance companies, but if the insurance company doesn't pay you what you should get in order to remediate, fix your house, clean it up, get the sopping wet stuff out if your roof is torn off or if a lot of water comes in through the roof or broken windows, and you can't clean it all out, you may have a claim to say, well, normally you don't pay for mold, but since you didn't give me the money to clean up my house, it became a petri dish. It became a mold factory. And now I think you should pay me for that mold that you created that situation. That's litigated.
Absolutely.
And I think that you make prevail on that.
And we amended another statute after Katrina. We had the shortest prescription period on the Gulf Coast of Texas through Florida, 1 year. We added another year to that. And now you have 2 years. And you have the right to be made whole. It's first-party coverage. You don't have to give them a release. You show them receipts and keep going back if need be until you are made whole.
This is such important information because I know a lot of folks are going to be dealing with this very issue. Unfortunately, we have completely run out of time, which simply means we're going to have you come back.
I'll be happy to do that. In the meantime, if your viewers would like, contact us, 1-800-259-5300. That's what we're there to do.
And remember, if you see something on the show that you like and you want to hear it again or you want to submit questions, go to our website, johnredmondpoa.com, and we will give you the information there. Thank you again, Commissioner Donelan. We hope to see you again very soon.
Thanks, John.
Great to have you.
Thanks, Shauna.
Thank you. See you next time.